March 1944. The early monsoon rains had returned to the hills of northeastern India. Rain fell through the bamboo forests, across rocky slopes, and down the narrow muddy road that wound from Dimapur to Imphal, two towns that, in the eyes of the Japanese, were the key to unlocking the gates of British India. Between them lay a small, quiet town called Kohima, perched on the Naga Hills, surrounded by mist and silence. No one imagined this lonely ridge would soon become one of the fiercest battlefields in Asia, where the fate of thousands would be decided on a tennis court. Before the first shots were fired, the war in Southeast Asia had reached a point of desperation. The Japanese Empire, once unstoppable from the Pacific to Burma, was now bleeding. Every victory, Singapore, Malaya, the Philippines, had become a burden too heavy to carry. Their front lines stretched too far, their supply chains too thin. But to Lieutenant General Renya Mutaguchi, commander of Japan's 15th Army in Burma, that didn't matter. He believed that to turn the tide, Japan had to bring the war to the very doorstep of the British. And so he launched an audacious, almost suicidal campaign. Operation U-Go. The goal, invade India, capture Imphal and Kohima, destroy the Allied supply route, and ignite an uprising against British rule. By mid-March, 3 Japanese divisions crossed the Chindwin River. The 15th advanced toward Imphal, the 33rd guarded the southern flank, and the 31st Division, under Lieutenant General Kotoku Sato, was ordered to seize Kohima, cut the Dimapur-Imphal road, and trap the entire Allied garrison inside Imphal, to starve them to death in the jungle. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, it was madness. Kohima stood nearly 1,500 meters above sea level. The path there twisted through mountains, rainforests, and cliffs where a single misstep meant death. There were no proper roads, no trucks, no supply lines. Everything, ammunition, food, medicine, had to be carried on foot. The Japanese believed they could take Kohima in a few days. They had no idea what waited for them. Indian, British, and Gurkha soldiers who refused to yield. At the start of April, fewer than 1,500 men defended the ridge, centered around the deputy commissioner's bungalow, a small wooden house with a tennis court in front. Within days, that court would become a killing ground. On April 3rd, Japanese scouts appeared at the edge of the ridge. By dawn on the 4th, the siege had begun. The Japanese attacked from 3 sides, north, east, and south, forcing the defenders back into a shrinking perimeter. There was no running water, no reinforcements, only the occasional airdrop from Dimapur. For days, no one slept. Rain mixed with smoke and blood. Whoever held the ridge lived. At Imphal to the south, other Allied troops were already surrounded. Mutaguchi believed victory was near, but he was wrong. About the terrain, about his men, and about the will of those trapped on that ridge. Behind the lines, General William Slim understood the stakes. If Kohima fell, Imphal would fall next. If Imphal fell, eastern India would be lost. He gave a single order. Hold Kohima, at all costs. A relief brigade, the 161st Indian Infantry, began its march through the mountains. By the time they arrived, Kohima was already burning. For a week, the Japanese stormed the slopes. They overran the garden and the storehouses. The British and Indian troops withdrew to the tennis court. Between them and the enemy lay just 15 meters of mud. A no-man's land where grenades flew back and forth for days. The court that once echoed with laughter now reeked of smoke and blood. Supplies ran out. Water was gone. Men chewed rice raw. They no longer fought for victory, only for breath. Kohima was not Stalingrad nor Normandy. There were no tanks, no photographs, no glory, only a ridge, a few hundred men, and a tennis court in the rain. But there, history changed direction. Sometimes the fate of empires is not decided on maps, but by men who refuse to leave their posts. April 4th, 1944. The hills shook under Japanese artillery. 13,000 men surrounded the ridge, determined to crush it. Against them, less than 1,500 defenders held on. From dawn till dusk, shells rained down. Trees splintered, earth erupted, the sky turned black. The Japanese crept closer, digging new trenches every night, crawling toward the court. Soon they were only a stone's throw away. By April 6, Kohima was cut off completely. No food, no water, no rest. Soldiers drank from shell holes and waited for death. In the east, the Japanese set up guns on Aradura Ridge, firing directly into the bungalow. The wooden house shattered, walls gone, roof torn away. But when the shelling paused, the defenders crawled out, rebuilt their sandbags, and waited again. Slim ordered, "Open the road to Kohima." The 161st Brigade marched through rain and mud, hauling artillery by hand up the narrow tracks. Every bend was ambushed. Every mile was paid in blood. Inside Kohima, the siege tightened. By April 9th, Japanese troops swarmed around the court. A Bren gun fired non-stop for 3 hours. When it finally fell silent, the gunner was dead, still holding the trigger. Food stores burned. Smoke filled the sky. A soldier whispered, "I've never seen rice burn before. It smells like war." For 4 more days the battle raged. Positions changed hands every hour. Men fought hand to hand among the ruins. By April 13th, the Japanese launched their largest assault yet. Hundreds charged through the fog, shouting "Banzai!" Machine guns roared in reply. When the firing stopped, 300 Japanese lay still in the mud. Mutaguchi's order came again. "Advance. The Emperor is with you." But the ridge still stood. On April 17th, the 161st Brigade broke through from the west. They found hell on earth, smoke, ashes, unburied bodies, and a tennis court drenched in blood. One young officer murmured, "We held Kohima, but there's no one left to count the living." Reinforcements changed everything. Artillery was dragged up, pounding the Japanese lines for the first time. From the skies, Dakotas dropped supplies. Some landed true, others fell into enemy hands. By April 18th, Slim's message reached the ridge. "Kohima still stands. Now we strike back." That night, rain stopped. Smoke rose from the valley. On the court, someone planted a flag. No one knew who. The next morning, the Japanese saw it and understood. Kohima had not fallen. When dawn broke on April 18, Kohima was silent except for the wind. Rain had ceased, but the smell of gunpowder and death lingered. The men who survived the siege looked like ghosts, faces hollow, eyes red from sleepless nights, uniforms soaked in blood. The arriving 161st Brigade stepped into a nightmare. There were no buildings, no roads, no trees, only craters, twisted metal, and corpses. One officer wrote, "Kohima is not a hill. It is a wound that still bleeds." For a moment, both sides paused, but silence here never meant peace. The Japanese, though starving, still held the eastern ridges. Mutaguchi demanded Sato attack again, "Even with your last man." Sato obeyed in silence. He knew the truth. There was no way forward and no way back. In his diary, he wrote 4 words, No road home anymore. The stench of death thickened. There was no space to bury the bodies. Leaves were thrown over the dead, and battles were fought again on the same ground. Blood and rain made rivers of red mud. A medic remembered, "I could no longer tell if I was saving a Brit, an Indian, or a Japanese. All bled the same color." On April 20th, British guns opened up. The 25-pounders fired without pause for 2 days. For the first time, the defenders heard the thunder of their own artillery. A soldier said, "It was the most beautiful sound I ever heard." When the barrage ended, the Gurkhas moved in. Blades flashed through fog. The Japanese counterattacked with bayonets and grenades. Every tree, every trench became a battleground. By April 22nd, Jail Hill was taken back, at the cost of 150 men. A young officer wrote, "We captured the hill, but no one had the strength to raise the flag." Rain returned. Mud swallowed the trenches. Men shivered with fever, yet stayed awake through the nights. The Japanese ate roots, leaves, and dead mules. Still they shouted "Tenno Heika Banzai" and charged again. On April 25th, the Allies launched their great assault, the battle for the tennis court ridge. Artillery thundered, smoke blanketed the hill. The fight lasted 10 hours. When it ended, the court was a swamp of blood and twisted bodies. A survivor said, "I couldn't tell where the court ended and the craters began. All I saw was red." By the end of April, the Japanese made one final attempt. They attacked under a moonless sky. Men stabbed, clawed, and screamed in the dark. When dawn came, thousands were dead. One soldier recalled, "I saw a Japanese and a British soldier locked together, both dead. In that moment, they were no longer enemies, only men caught in the same madness. No one counted the dead." Over 3,000 Japanese and 2,500 Allied soldiers lay on that ridge. Those who survived buried the rest in shallow graves. On rough wooden stakes, they wrote with charcoal, "For your tomorrow we gave our today." That line would later be carved in stone at the Kohima War Cemetery. By early May, both sides were spent, the Japanese starving, the Allies sick with malaria and exhaustion. General Sato sent one last message. "To continue is to die for nothing." Mutaguchi did not reply. On May 5th, the Gurkhas raised their flag once more over the tennis court. A young Indian soldier knelt and whispered, "May they rest in peace." 6 days later, Kohima was free, but nothing was left standing. The ground itself seemed burned to ash. A war correspondent wrote, "If hell exists on earth, it is here." Kohima had no statues, no parades, only a tennis court where thousands fell silently in the mud, and where the rain still carries their story. May 1944. The rains had ended. Sunlight touched the ridges, revealing what was left. Craters, bones, and shadows of the war that refused to fade. The battle was over, but its smell, the scent of earth, gunpowder, and death, still hung in the wind. On May 11th, Kohima was declared secure. The survivors crawled out from their trenches. No cheers, no songs. A Gurkha murmured, "The sun shines on the tennis court, but there's no one left to play." The Japanese artillery fired one last volley from the east. By the 16th, silence fell completely. A silence so deep it felt unnatural, the kind that comes only after everything has been destroyed. When medical teams arrived, they found no town left. Only a hill blackened by fire, covered in wreckage and the dead. A reporter wrote, "There is no victory here, only the end of hell." In the jungles beyond, General Sato realized what Mutaguchi would never admit. The war was lost. His army was starving, sick, and broken. He wrote, "I have no men to fight, no bullets to fire, and no reason to die for nothing." On May 20th, he ordered a retreat. Thousands began the long walk back through the jungle. Many never made it. Disease and hunger killed more than bullets. A survivor later said, "We did not lose to the British. We lost to the jungle, to hunger, to our own madness." Mutaguchi blamed Sato, called him a traitor, and pressed on with his doomed offensive. Within weeks, the entire Yugo campaign collapsed. 65,000 Japanese soldiers were dead or missing, the greatest loss Japan ever suffered in Asia. For the Allies, Kohima was a turning point. It saved Imphal, it saved India, and it marked the beginning of Japan's retreat from Burma. General William Slim later wrote, "Kohima and Imphal were the turning point of the war in the East. After them, we never defended again. We advanced, but the cost was unbearable. Over 4,000 Allied troops died. Nearly 6,000 Japanese never returned. Each grave holds a story that ended too soon. Today, white headstones line the Kohima War Cemetery. Some bear no names, only the words, 'Known unto God.' The tennis court remains untouched. The cracked bricks lie beneath the grass. On the memorial stone above it, the same line is carved. When you go home, tell them of us and say, 'For your tomorrow, we gave our today.'" No general wrote that line. It came from those who never left this hill. Kohima teaches that wars are not decided by commanders, but by ordinary men who simply refuse to run. They were not heroes, but they are the reason others still live in peace. After the war, the jungle reclaimed the ridge. Children play where soldiers once fell. Church bells ring where mortars once thundered. But when the wind moves through the valley, some say you can still hear voices, faint echoes saying, "Do not forget us." Kohima, a small name on a forgotten map, yet the place where the world changed direction. A battle without glory, only endurance. A tennis court where time stopped, and where the price of peace was paid in blood. Because peace is not a reward, it is a gift, bought by those who never came home. When you go home, tell them of us and say, "For your tomorrow, we gave our today."